Hello and welcome to The Herd Has Spoken, a podcast brought to you by MuskOx Men's Apparel. All right, I'm excited you decided to join us for this episode of The Herd Has Spoken. You will not be disappointed getting a chance to hear from Casey Andringa, U.S. Olympian, member of the U.S. ski team, finished 5th in the 2018 Freestyle Mogul Olympics in Pyeongchang. Casey is a fantastic world-class athlete, also a drummer and plays guitar in a local band, Salty. We should give that some quick props. Casey and I get into that, but I think more importantly, we get into Casey's story and the amazing adversity that he's had to overcome to get to the Olympics. A lot of the trials and tribulations that he's had was really on the brink of just hanging up his skis a couple of times. And we talk about how he's been able to bounce back, get off the mat with the help of his family, his brother, his sister, and his parents have been a huge part of that. And what's enabled him to really know he's given 100% and just kind of let the chips fall where they may when the big moment arises. So I think there's a ton we can all learn from Casey Andringa. So with no further ado, my conversation with Casey. Casey Andringa, welcome to The Herd Has Spoken.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, by now listeners already know your story, Olympian, successful Olympian, dealt with a ton of adversity, but I want to start with something that's near and dear to your heart. And that is the fact that you're actually a drummer. So tell me about your band and what the status of Salty is.
So I will just clarify up front. Salty is a band that my friend Andre and I started solely because I was decent at the drums and he's really good at guitar and singing. And a couple of years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago now, we really just wanted to play punk rock songs in front of our friends, and we wanted to force people to listen. And so we're like, perfect, we're going to start a band. And he was the lead guitarist and the singer. And then we actually switch off one song, and I am the guitarist and singer, and he's the drummer, which, because I play guitar, just nice. It's easier to travel with a guitar than it is drums. So it was kind of just like a fun little hobby thing. We've played 3 quote unquote shows at this point. But when I say shows, I mean our friends' backyards at their college houses and stuff. It's kind of just a fun thing. I like to say I'm in a band, and so that's why it's all over my profile on the internet. But at the end of the day, it's really just me and my buddy just like jamming as loud as we can on some instruments. So it's, maybe calling it a full-blown band is a stretch, but we like to
we'll roll with it. We'll roll with it. What's the top song in the Salty repertoire?
Oh my gosh, I think it's got to be What's My Age Again by Blink-182.
Yes.
The favorite.
Classic punk band song. Very cool. So Casey, I think probably a lot of folks who are listening aren't super familiar with your story, and so you're a U.S. Olympian. You're part of the U.S. ski team, part of the freestyle team doing moguls, which basically means you go down the hill crazy fast, hitting moguls. If you're not a skier, huge bumps back and forth, getting your butt kicked, and then you go to these huge aerial jumps where you're twisting around, you're doing flips. It's pretty crazy. It's sort of one of the events of the Olympics that everyone loves to watch, and if they know absolutely nothing about skiing. But as we know, life is not a success only journey, and you've experienced more than your fair share of adversity. And so you were part of the Pyeongchang Olympics in Korea in 2018, which is awesome. But I want to go back 9 months before the Olympics. And my understanding is that in May 2017, the U.S. national team came out with rankings in terms of who was most likely to be on the Olympic team. And there's 3 tiers of athletes. And there's tier 1, which is the top 2 skiers for U.S. national team. And Casey was not part of tier 1. And then there's tier 2, which is number 3 and 4 in terms of the US ski team's rankings. And Casey was not part of tier 2. And then there's tier 3, which is kind of everybody else. So there's 7 other people who are ranked in terms of their likelihood to make the Olympic team. And there's 7 guys, and you are not part of that 7 group either. So I want to go back to May 2017, and what's going through your head at the moment where you see the rankings being released and you're not in tier 1, you're not in tier 2, and you're not in tier 3?
Yeah, so it was a pretty devastating blow, because I came out of that season in 2017 with my best season ever. There's this thing called the North American Tour, which is basically you compete all over the US and Canada, and the winner gets automatically named to the US team. And in the history of the tour, basically, if you're second place or if you're a contender, you also would get named. Or if, you'd be skiing World Cups the following year. And there's so many stats I could tell you about it. Like, so it's a Grand Prix kind of tour. So when you get points at every event, and then at the end, there's overall points. You get like 100 if you win an event, and then you get down to 0 if you get like 30th or whatever. And at the end of the whole tour, at 8 events, I was one of 2 people in the history of the circuit to ever get 7 out of 8 podiums on the circuit. And I also finished with over 500 points, which I know it's a pretty meaningless number in this context, but anybody that had ever scored over 300 points had gotten named to the team instantly. And so I finished that tour in late March, and I ended up second due to like one event that I kind of blew, but I was super excited. All of the US team guys that I had beaten the whole tour came out to me and they're like, hey, can't wait for you to be our teammate. Like, like so excited. You obviously did it. You beat all of us. And so I was feeling pretty good about it. I was like, the Olympics are coming up. I'm finally on the team. This is also, I'm 21 at this point, I think. And, I've had friends quit and retire, and I've dedicated, this is all I've ever dreamed about, was being on the US team, skiing for my country. The Olympics were the obvious dream, but at this point I just wanted to make the US team. And so in April, there's an April 11th or something, they call everybody that made the team. And I was waiting for my call, and I didn't get a call. And I was like, all right, whatever, like maybe it's not April 11th. Maybe I was mistaken. And all of a sudden, one of my friends texts me. He's like, did you hear anything? And I was like, no, not yet. Like, bet you it's tomorrow. And he's like, oh no, we all got our calls. And I was just crushed. Like, it was instantly, I pictured moving to Costa Rica and starting a new life. And I was like, game over. Like, let me do something else. This has hurt me too many times.
For sure. Do you remember exactly where you were when your buddy texted you that?
Yeah, I do actually. I was on a road trip with my brother that we had actually gone on to we'd done this big road trip to California to go surfing and climbing and stuff, and just sleeping in our car with the sole reason of he knew I was like going to be stressing about it every day for a month.
Right.
And so we went to like get our heads clear, and then we got a call. Like, I think we were in Big Sur, California, and I found out, and I was just absolutely devastated. And so we came back to Colorado, and I was just crushed. And at this point, I'd given so much time, so much energy, and physically I'd just destroyed my body trying to get here. And I told my dad, I was like, I think I'm done. Like, I can't go through this again. Like, there's these politics involved. I feel like I've been getting the short end of the stick for, 5 years now. I had friends, it's getting bad when you tell friends that I've had for years, childhood friends and family. And when I had told them that I was still skiing, they were like, oh, good for you.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, you could tell there was some pity there. They kind of felt bad for me still chasing this pipe dream. And so I came back to Colorado, and I told my dad, I was like, I'm done. I can't, this is too much for me. Like, this sucks. I'm over it. I'm just over it.
Yeah. You got to think at some point maybe the world's telling you something, because my
Right.
understanding is that you had other years where you were rocking out as well. When you're, and you tore one meniscus, right? When you were having one of your best years to date at that point. And then
Hmm.
2 years later, the exact same thing happened, but on a different knee. Right. And so
Yeah.
all of that had happened too, where I was like so close, you're like close to the top of the mountain and you fall, get to the top of the mountain and fall. So not only like that season, but just like cumulatively, there's a lot of signs that are like, Casey, man, this isn't going to happen. Right.
Yeah. And I've tried to, even since I try to be in tune with, like what I feel inside and what I feel like the world is trying to tell me and stuff. And there was two ways to look at it. There was the way I felt, where it was the universe is telling me to be done and to move on and to do something else with my life. And to, go to school and just like focus on that. And then there's the other way of looking at it, which is, it's the Rocky Balboa story. It's like
For sure.
the sports dream. That's that dream that when you're a little kid, like that's the story you hear and that's what you believe in for the next 10 years of your life. And so that's kind of what my dad told me when I came back to Boulder, and he let it marinate for like a week. And I was like, I was done. I was over it. And he finally sat me down and just, basically told me, Casey, the Olympics are 10 months away or 9 months away. This has been your dream your entire life. You've got 9 months to try and get there. Why not go for it? Why not? And I was like, oh, the world's telling me to be done. Like I've had setback after setback. And he just kept saying over and over again, he's like, why not go for it? And he, luckily, my parents are so supportive of these dreams I've had. And so he basically, I was like, yeah, but like, like I want to go to school and work and like, make my own money and stuff. And he's like, don't worry about that. We'll help you do, whatever you need to do. If you want to do this. And so that night I went to sleep and I thought about it a whole bunch, and I realized that like I was too close to the Olympics, and I knew I was one of the top guys in the US, but it just because I wasn't labeled that by the US team, it was, that's what defeated me. And so that's basically what he told me. Is like, if you truly know that you are at the top, or you could be at the top, is it not worth it to go for it? And so the next day I told him that I'm going for it. And so we started laying out a plan for the summer, and he asked me what my next steps were. And basically, because I wasn't sure where I was going to live, where I was going to train, what we were going to do, because every regional team you're part of has like different training programs and stuff. But I knew that if this was going to work, I needed it to be more intensive. I needed to work harder. I needed to be better. I needed to be stronger than I have ever had in my entire life. And so I made a joke about we could just get a camper and live in the woods, because up in Steamboat, there's some Route National Forest really close to the training center that we use up here. And it was just a joke. And about 2 weeks later, he calls me up and he goes, hey, Casey, so I just bought this 90s pop-up camper for you and your brother to live in.
Later known as the Viking, right?
Was
it the Viking?
Yeah, it was the Viking. And so, 2 weeks later, I came home and he had this old 90s pop-up camper with some tears and stuff. And my brother Jesse and he also skis moguls. We moved all of our belongings up into the woods, into Steamboat, early in the summer for like a couple weeks just to test it out. And then we went and trained on snow. And then this is where the story really gets good at the end of the summer.
If it's okay, I want to pause you for a second and go back, because I think this is a crucial moment here where you kind of course, like you have setback after setback, and you'd clearly thought about quitting. In fact, it sounded like you'd started the wheels in motion towards doing that. And obviously your dad, who's a great athlete, college hockey player as well, sat you down and really encouraged you to think about it. But what I'm curious, and I think a lot of people listening will really want to know, is like, what is it that gave you the strength to keep going? I mean, how did you find that? Where did it come from? Like ultimately, what was the what was the what was the thought process that gave, like, I guess you shared the thought process, but like, how did you find that strength? Cause I feel like that's really hard to get up after you've gotten knocked down like that one more time.
For sure. I think honestly, everybody has a dream growing up. When you're a little kid, you might maybe want to be an astronaut or the president or a race car driver or something. And from my earliest memory, all I wanted to do was be an Olympic skier. That's literally like every single decision I've made in my life, barring, some like teenage punk decisions of just like rebellion or whatever. But the majority of my decisions in my entire life were in the direction of wanting to represent my country and, ski for the USA on an international scale. And so I think just knowing that he genuinely believed I could do it and feeling that on top of having this dream that was, the only thing standing in the way of it at that point was how hard I worked. He was going to help me out with the living situation. And, I knew how to train. I knew what I needed to do. And so from there, it just became like my own little, we grew up watching the movie Miracle with the 1980 hockey team.
That's my favorite movie. Herb Brooks.
Yeah. So one of my dad's good friends, Mark Johnson, was on that team. So we grew up like really close to that whole story. And so it kind of like, I just caught this glimpse of like, it can be done, like it's these stories are out there because they do happen. Like, why not me? You know?
I love it because there's almost a story of identity, I feel like, baked in there where it's like, this is what you've dreamed of your whole life. This is what you've worked towards your whole life. It's like, no, this is kind of who I am. And I think this comes to bear, certainly later in the story that we're going towards, but it's kind of like, it's almost like a go for broke moment here, right? Because you got 9 months to go to the Olympics and you're clearly behind, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's where you are. And it's kind of like, well, let's get after it. Next thing you know, you and your brother in a camper in Steamboat training around the clock. So walk us through here, because it sounds like this is the part of the story that gets particularly crazy, you're saying.
Yeah, so that was actually a really good way to put it. It was definitely a go for broke situation. And another thing that kind of helped push me in this direction was I've had so many people older than me, and everybody always telling younger folks like, oh, you'll regret it when you're older, like it's the old adage that like you only regret the chances that you didn't take, kind of thing. And so I thought about it and I realized that, it's 9 months away. The only thing that's gonna so I'm trying to think of a good way to like really phrase this, but like the only way that I would leave this situation upset with myself and I'd regret it for the rest of my life is if I didn't give it 150% of what I've given it before. Cause like I'd worked hard, like I was like one of the top guys in the US. So I thought, but I always felt like maybe there was something I was leaving on the table. And so that summer was when I finally decided, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to eat, sleep, and just breathe skiing and being better at just doing everything I can. And so that's when we moved our camper around to Rabbit Ears Pass. And we were there for 2+ months, which you're not really supposed to be camping for that long, but we like moved our camper a couple 100 yards every 2 weeks or whatever to, say that we were
whatever it takes, man. You're trying to get in the Olympics.
And so, we were up there. We had literally no distractions. We had, we were eating crazy healthy, just a lot of tuna sandwiches, a lot of protein. That we were cooking like chicken and rice for dinner every single night. We would when we went up there in the summertime, it was super nice, beautiful. You'd be going to bed and it'd be like 50 degrees out. You see the stars, and it ended up late September, early October, and we'd be going to bed when it'd be like freezing out, and then you'd wake up to 6 to 8 inches of snow on the ground. All of our water was frozen. So just to boil water for oatmeal, we'd have to chip the water out of our ice jug and put ice chunks in this like pot to melt them just to boil the water. And it's definitely, I think a lot of people, and even myself, would be deterred by something like that. Cause like, it's not easy living up there. Like you're living in the woods, like you're waking up with frost on your eyelashes. And like the whole camper is like, if you touch the metal, your hand sticks to it on the inside. Cause it's not insulated. It's a pop-up camper. It's made out of canvas. And it would get down to, I don't know, 10 degrees at night, 6 degrees at night. But it like the harder it got and the worse the weather got, it kind of felt like just more and more like this was our story, It was, instead of deterring us and making us want to go home, it made us push harder, because all of a sudden we had these obvious obstacles. We were like, no one else is going to push through this. Like,
right.
But we can.
You're Rocky Balboa training in the winter in Russia, except you're with your brother.
Exactly. And so thank God I had him up there, because I probably would have, gotten a hotel room a lot of those nights. But I had him to, he would have made fun of me if I had tried to do that. So yeah. So from there we'd go and we'd jump in the morning on these plastic jumps where you send it off into a lake, and then we'd either go to the gym afterwards, which is also where we showered. At the gym we had a membership to, or we would go poach the high school football equipment, the track and field equipment, and we'd set up obstacle course or run sprints or agility training, like anything. And so we were training like 2 to 3 times a day, honestly 7 days a week for probably 3 months.
And at that moment, Casey, what are you training for, right? So obviously, Olympics are 9 months away. There's this ranking system, but what are you trying to aspire to? Because you don't just go from, the rankings, 9 months, 8 months before the Olympics to qualifying. Like there's interim steps along the way, I would guess. Like, are you guys focused on trying to prepare for something along the way? Like where was your head in terms of what the next step was?
Yeah. So, very astute observation. You cannot go just from my position to the Olympics. There's this kind of iconic event called U.S. selections that happens now. It happens in January. It's happened in December every time I've ever skied it. And essentially it's an event. It's like a placement exam basically. And so at that event, they take the top top 1 or 2 guys and 1 or 2 girls, and they get to ski a World Cup. And everybody else that does well gets to ski the North American circuit again. But I'd already decided I was not going to ski that same North American circuit. I was going to go to school. So basically going into it, based on my current ranking where I was sitting, the only way for me to win these World Cups based on who was going to be at this event was to win not just one of the days of competing, but both of the days of competition. If I got second, then I was going to pack it up and go to school full time. And so that event was December 16th or 17th of 2017. And I remember vividly every single night laying in bed and getting that nauseous feeling in your stomach of anxiety, that what you would feel before a big test or, any big event in your life. But my big event was still 3 months away, and I literally couldn't sleep some nights because I was so concerned about it. And because that's the other thing about mogul skiing is you don't get any mistakes. There's no do-overs, and so
right.
your qualification run, if you mess up, you don't get a second run, and then in your semifinals run, you have to qualify for the top 6, and if you mess up, you don't get a third run. And then when you're in the top 6. Normally, if you mess up a little bit, maybe you get third, but I didn't have any room for error. And so I had to ski 6 perfect runs back to back, which I'd never done before. And
So
so
you're just fascinated with this every night, when you and your brother were camping, like that was all you were focused on, these 6 runs, and you're in a position where you've put that pressure on yourself, which I think is really interesting, right? Like you've said, hey, if I don't go 6 for 6, that's it. I'm out. I'm going back to school. I'm interested to hear the thinking behind that, because it sounds like there might have been a path, and I don't know, right? So keep me honest here. There might have been a path if you went to like the US challenges, and if you could have like dominated that and done well, but you were of the mindset of like, hey, I've already done that. It didn't work. In order for me to do this, I need to get to the World Cup and place there. So was this an added like, layer of pressure you think you might have subconsciously put on yourself, or was there literally no way you could make the Olympics unless you went to the World Cup event?
so there's some sort of discretionary. You can get named to the World Cup team based off discretion if the coaches see you and think that you're like, the guy. There has been times when that happens, but I had seen for about 5 years now that was not going to be the case for me.
Yeah.
And so my path was only to win that event. So
Okay.
that was the only way it was going to happen. And I also wasn't going into it thinking like, oh, how can I end up on the US team at the end of the ski season? I wasn't out there trying to extend my,
Right.
10-year ski legacy on the US team. I was there to go for the next 9 months. And then that was it. That was all I could see was that next 9 months.
Olympics.
So,
What do I
or
need to
3
do
months, whatever it was.
to get to the
Yeah.
Olympics? Very cool. Very cool. And in the interest of time, right? Obviously you went ahead, you absolutely crushed it for these 6 runs. It was exactly like what you were hoping for. You won it going away is my understanding. And then you get to these World Cup events, and you within a span of 4 days you get a 5th and a 7th place in the World Cup. So you've suddenly like had like the most amazing run. And then my understanding is you get the call, right? So soon after that, you get the call that says, hey, Casey, like all those struggles that you've had, all those doubts that you've found a way to overcome, all the training, all the surgeries you had to deal with, they're going to pay off, and you're going to be part of the Olympic team. Where were you in that moment, and what was the feeling like when you heard the news?
Yeah. So that whole month is the craziest. It's one of those things that I never fully was able to even process because it happened so fast. Because I went from this like, no name kid to doing well at the World Cups. And I got to ski my World Cup. I could have died happy right there. Like I got to wear the USA flag. I got to ski for my country at a World Cup because I knew how much of a long shot the Olympics was. At that point, I was like, the Olympics would be great, but I'm here. This is all I wanted my whole life. Like I got to the World Cup. I didn't even care what happened. I was like, I'm just going to ski. I cried most days out of like tears of joy. Like it was just the most emotional thing for me. And like I was going up the chairlift and I was looking at the course for my first ever World Cup run. And I literally just started bawling just because like it was too much for me. And then I did well. And then fast forward 30 days, and a lot of people think that you get named to the Olympic team 6 months in advance, a year in advance. At least that's what I thought growing up. But it was about, I think it was like January 25th or something. And we're in Tremblant, Quebec. And we had our last event, and we had a team meeting, and I'm sitting there like I'm not even really on the team. I'm just kind of a guest. And they're announcing the Olympic team candidates, and they're like, yeah, so Bradley Wilson, our number 1 guy, Troy Murphy, number 2, Casey Andringa, number 3, Emerson Smith, number 4. And I was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, that's like, I thought it was like candidates, like potential. Like I didn't think that was set in stone. So I walked away and I was like, that's pretty crazy. And my coach from Vail, who was actually at the event, came up. He's like, Casey, like you realize you did it? And I was like, no, those are just, that could change. And he's like, no, Casey, that's happening. Like you've done it. Like you are going to the Olympics. And like, I just like, I'm starting to break down right now just even talking about it. It was just, it's not even a feeling I can really explain, because it was so much just setback and like destroying my body and like not going to school and like not, you know, I had friendships that fell by the wayside and like all this stuff. And I put my family through the ringer. Like there was a point in time where my dad hated answering the phone during the day for me, because every time I called him, it was like an injury or I was dying or like something like that. And so I got to call them and just be like, we're going to the Olympics. And it was just like, oh man.
Do you think you would have been able to get to that point and be able to like appreciate it that much and have such fantastic success if you hadn't gone through all those challenges? Because I got to imagine there's a lot of people listening right now and they're going through shit, right? It might not be, you know, five injuries, some odd decisions, you know, relative to number of podiums that you've gotten. But people are going through hardship, and I'm curious, you know, do you think you would have been able to go that far and push yourself that hard if you hadn't gone through all those setbacks? I think it's really interesting to hear you say, like, I found a little bit more room to push in that summer of 2017.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I think had it happened any other way, had I been named to the US team that year, I don't think it would have happened for me. I don't think that it just, everything had to boil down to this one event. And I guess, you know, it's different for everybody. And there were people on the Olympic team who were there who had great success since they were young, and like, you know, they were ecstatic because they got to ski the Olympics. But like, as far as I know, I'm the only one that cried on my run up the Olympic chair. Like I kind of walked away from it realizing that, you know, the harder you have to fight, the better it's going to feel. Like there's, you know, if things come easily to you, then what's the point? You know, there's really no, like, it's the struggle and it's the pain and it's the part of my friends, but the shitty parts, like it's all of that makes the end game worth it. And like, I realized I got in this crazy circumstance and I, you know, came out ahead, and it just as easily could have gone the other way. It was, you know, friggin' 1 in a million that it worked out that way. But I think the only reason it happened is because I was at a point where I knew that I'd truly done everything that I possibly could, everything in my power, that no matter how I went, if I had fallen my first round at the US selections and hadn't gone to school, I would have walked away and said, I did everything in my power. Like, there's, you know, that's all you can do. That's all you ever can do, is just work as hard as you can and control what you personally do and how you spend your time. And then the rest is just kind of up to fate and the world, or, you know, whatever you personally believe in.
So there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of distraction. And somehow you've been able to put it all aside and concentrate on what's important. And how do you do that? Right. I mean, back then, right now, there's a lot going on, you know, as a world-class athlete, again, training with the national team in the midst of a pandemic where we've already had, you know, Olympic cycle delayed a year. Obviously, you know, it's not impacting the Winter Olympics, to the best of my knowledge, but like there's a lot going on. And like, how are you able to put all that stuff to the side and be able to concentrate?
Yeah, I mean, I would be just straight up lying to you if I said that I was able to do that perfectly. It's been, honestly, the pandemic, I've been extremely lucky that, you know, my family members and I that have had COVID have made it out unscathed. And I can't really talk about, or, I can't attest to how the U.S. team handles it because, like I said, I haven't really been with the U.S. team for the past 8 months.
And that's because of
But
injuries, correct, Casey? Because you've been dealing with some injuries.
because of more injuries. But I think, for me, the pandemic on top of my freshly shattered wrist and recovering from my knee surgery that I had a year and a half ago, I definitely have not been good at pushing the distractions and the noise away. And I got to it's kind of my story round 2, who knows how this one's going to end up. But I was really, really struggling because, I couldn't see my friends. I couldn't train with the U.S. team. I was stuck at home. I turned 25 and I had to move home to nurse my hand that was stuck in an external fixator with a metal bar just holding my bones in place.
Living the dream.
And and I was really sad, and I was pretty depressed, and that was another point where I was 100% sure I was done. I was done as of October this year. And then, I got lucky and had some good physical therapists for both my knee and my wrist. And I've taken some classes, and I got back into, I did a bunch of coaching. So I was able to get back into the community and feel the skiing love and, all that again. And then now I'm here at my first U.S. team training camp, sitting in Steamboat, and I skied my first actual mogul run today in almost 18 months. So
what an event. What a day, right? It's definitely cause to celebrate for sure. And I love what you said in there, because I've found that one of the best ways to get out of a challenging situation for anybody when you're in a funk, when you're down, because it happens to everybody, right? Like here you are, finished 5th place in the Olympics, on the U.S. ski team. And look, you're going to have shitty days. You're going to have down times, like we all do. And what I think's really cool is one of the things that you did to get yourself out of that is you started to give back to other people. And it's as a teacher, obviously you've got a fantastic set of skills where there's a lot of people who could benefit from hearing your advice. And you went and you did that. And that was part of what lifted you out of the funk. And I've heard some folks in the cities, and this might seem a little bit weird and kind of transactional just from a dollar's perspective, but I know when people have been really having a hard time, they've actually walked around the city and found people who were struggling, homeless or really hard up, and gave them, $5 or a sub or whatever the case is. And it's when you give back to people, the crazy thing is you wind up gaining so much more than you possibly even could give to someone else. And I think that's a really cool thing, that whether you stumbled into it or not, you found a great way to be able to kind of lift yourself up throughout those challenging times.
Oh, undoubtedly. Yeah. And it's been I was very lucky to have such a unique circumstance where I was able to work with these kids who were so passionate about this thing that I happen to know a lot about. And so while I got to, help them get better and help them pursue their goals, they were also helping me not just, relearn the basics and relearn, all the technical little bits and stuff, but they also helped me relearn, why we're all out there. These kids are 15 years old. They don't have, it's not as convoluted when you're 15. They're just out there because they love skiing moguls with their friends,
right? Right.
And
it's so just pure.
So to be around that, it was just really cool. And I was like, wow, it's really what it's about. No one's getting rich off mogul skiing. If you're doing it for the money, you better quit now.
Yeah.
It was just so cool to be out there and be like, wow, it's really just about the community and, being able to give back and just how much fun you have. And it really helped kind of reshape my mindset about everything. And this is only going back 30 days. This is all very, very fresh.
I love it. Well, I want to definitely talk about your Olympic experience, because we haven't had a chance to get into that yet. But I think you bring up a great point here, is look, at the end of the day, you're a 25-year-old athlete, and you've got a lot of stress on you, right? But you find some really cool, crazy ways to have fun in addition to you giving back and teaching. But my understanding is, there's a little tradition with Riley Campbell and all the folks at the ski and snowboard club of Vail, where before big events you're playing with crystals, you got matchboxes rolling up your arm and your helmet. But really more broadly, like, how do you balance having fun while like competing in a sport that's very serious in a lot of ways and requires like 100% commitment?
Yeah, I mean, it honestly, my answer has changed over the past couple of years. Like during the Olympics, I realized the only way that I've ever skied, and the only way I've ever done well is when I'm just out there having a great time. And it worked great for me because I was the underdog, and when you're the underdog, it's easy to live that life. And so, but now, I'm a veteran on the US team and going to this next Olympics. Like I'm the guy that kind of knows the ropes and there's expectations and stuff. And so I hope to find that same mindset of realizing why I'm there. I think that's really what it boils down to, is obviously I'd like to win a medal, but at the end of the day, like if it wasn't fun, if it wasn't a great time, I probably wouldn't be doing it, because there's downsides, and I feel like the upsides outweigh the downsides when you get there. And so yeah, I hope that I can recreate that mindset moving forward and just kind of do it for the love of what I'm doing. And I get to ski with my brother now, who's also on the US team, and that's like super special.
Yeah. What a great family story too. Like your dad's the one that kind of pulled you to keep you going. Your brother obviously was the one, your training partner throughout, and now he's a teammate with you. I mean, to have that sort of family engagement and like a rock of a family. I mean, that's such a huge blessing. And obviously, that's a tremendous part of your success. Is your family and them being there for you like for so many years and making so many sacrifices.
Oh, for sure. And also, if my sister might listen to this, my sister, she also skied moguls, and now she is a fantastic artist at CU. So, and she's also been crazy supportive, and I also wouldn't be without her.
For sure.
Throw that in there.
No, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I've got two sisters. They've helped shape me in so many ways, and I think that's super important to call out for sure. So yeah, I think like one of the things that you said that really struck a chord with me, and I think this is probably a part of your success here, is sort of like, look, you're gonna have big moments, and big moments are gonna happen, but you can't necessarily control what's going to happen in that moment. But man, it's freeing and it's liberating if you know in your heart of hearts like that you've done everything you could to be prepared for that moment, because then it's kind of like, look, I've done everything I can. I'm just going to let it rip, and I'm going to have a ton of fun. And I almost feel like what I heard you say, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, Casey, but is that because you work so hard, that allowed you to like be free in those most critical moments to just have fun and do your thing. I mean, is that part of the recipe of success, is like knowing you've given everything you could and you couldn't do anything more? So it's almost like freeing in that moment.
Oh, 100%. You said it better than I ever have, actually. So I might steal that. But yeah, there's, cause you can only control so much, especially in a competitive environment or just in life. You can only control a few, just a select few things. And so when you get to a big moment, when you get to one of those, impasses, just knowing that you've done everything you can. And it's one thing to say that you've done everything you can, and then it's another thing to feel that, like you said, in your heart of hearts, where there's no doubt in your mind, like you're going to go to bed the next day and you're not going to lose any sleep over it, because you are content with you worked. There's nothing else you could have done. And at that point, there's nothing else you can do, like it's no matter what it is. I mean, in my event, it's a 20-second mogul run. And once you push out of the gate, you don't think, you're just at the bottom before you even remember what happened. And so it's almost like it's not even up to you at that point, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you froze on me there. Yeah. But yeah, it's you. It's kind of like it's out of your hands.
I love it. I love it. Well, look, we're quite a ways in here, and we've sort of buried the lead because we haven't even really talked about your Olympic experience. So I want to get a chance to talk about that, because my understanding is you just totally pulled an audible in the Olympics, and you just went after a stunt, which is that you'd never done before, which is insane, right? Like no one does this. Like biggest moment of your life, you've prepared for 20 years at this point, and all of a sudden you're doing a cork 1080 and you throw in this truck driver grab. Like what was going through your mind when you decided to pull in like a stunt? Because I mean, look, for those that aren't listening, like this is just not the way it's done. You don't do something that you haven't
Really
practiced
not.
time and time and time again in the Olympics. Like this is like next level boldness here.
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of people come up to me and like shake me and like, what were you thinking? But yeah, in mogul skiing, the only tricks that you compete are tricks that you've been training for a year, 2 years, 5 years. Those are the only tricks that you ever actually are throwing. But in the Olympics, I somehow made it into the super final round after 5 rounds of competing. It was me and 5 other guys. And every run I'd gotten down there with Riley Campbell, who's actually in my hotel room right now. He's the U.S. team coach at this point. And I would get down to him and be like, we would just start laughing at how hilarious it was that we were at the Olympics. Because, you know, a year before that, we had been skiing nonsense events. And so I qualify for the super final. I'm just blown away. And I pull up to him and I was like, Riley, do I do the trucker? And because you know, I trust that guy with my life. You know, whatever he tells me for my whole ski career, if he told me to, you know, ski on my hands and knees, like I would be like, yeah, I mean, if he thinks it'll work, like I just trust him inherently. And so this was the first time I get down there, and I asked him what trick I should do, and he said, Casey, you're gonna have to make the call on this one. And I was blown away, because normally, you know, we'd consult the magic 8-ball pen, or we'd hold some crystals in our hands just to lighten the mood or whatever. And he told me he didn't know. And so there's this trick that I had been training all summer with my brother in Steamboat. And I'd made this joke when I was training it, that if I was ever in the super finals at the Olympics, I would throw this trick. And at that point, I might as well have been saying, when I'm the president of the United States,
right?
You know, like it was just like something you say. And I'd done it on snow a couple of times. I'd done it once in preparation for the Olympics, but I'd never put it together in a full run before. And this is where it gets kind of serendipitous, because there's this guy, Johnny Mosley, who won the gold medal in the '98 Olympics. And then in 2002, he did this new trick called a dinner roll that he should have won. He stomped it. It was this crazy off-axis spinny thing, and he got 4th. And it was this horrible injustice, and we were all pissed about it. But that's what got me into mogul skiing. Anyways, so Johnny Mosley is now commentating at the Olympics for my super final run. And I don't know what trick I should do. So I'm on the chairlift. It's 11 at night, pitch black out. All I can see is like the golden course illuminated next to me. And I was just going over back and forth in my head, you know, because I knew that if I did my normal run that I'd been doing, the best I could do was 3rd place. It was, if everything went perfectly, I would get 3rd place. And I was going up the list, and I was picturing, you know, how I got to this moment, and like all the things that had to transpire to line up. The stars had to align perfectly. And I like went all the way back, and I was like, why am I here? And I realized it was because I saw Johnny Mosley when I was 8 years old throw this crazy trick, even though he knew it probably wasn't going to score that well. And so I realized, like, 8-year-old me watching at home, like you don't ski at the Olympics to win 3rd place. You're at the Olympics. Like you ski to win a gold medal. That's what you do.
So let me pause you here, because this is powerful, Casey. I mean, you're sitting here riding the chairlift up for your final run at the Olympics in the super finals, and you're making a decision that's all about helping the next generation of skiers, just like Johnny Mosley helped you. And you're thinking about like, hey, I got to do this. Like, I got to pay it forward. I got to make sure that I'm doing the craziest, the most bold thing ever, like you said, so that my ceiling isn't finishing third, but it's being able to go after the gold.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way you put it. It sounds, maybe it was, I was doing it for the kids at home, but it was, you know, I just don't think I could have. I was talking about you don't want to lose sleep over at night over your past decisions
Right.
and stuff. You want to know you did everything you could. I realized that if I did the run I'd been doing, which was a good run, like I would have ended up third or fourth. And like, if you get a medal, you make a bunch of money. You get a medal, you get to stand on the podium. Pretty cool. But I just realized that if I didn't at least try to win, that I would lie awake at night for the rest of my life, wondering what would have happened if I had gone for it. And also, like, the only reason I was even there was because I watched Johnny Mosley go for it, even though he knew the odds were against him. And I just, like, that wasn't my story. My story wasn't, I've never been Mr. Consistency who gets, third places and gets on the podium. I'm a go for broke kind of person, I guess.
Yeah. My understanding is that's kind of
doesn't
like
always pan out.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But what I see as a track record for you is you really seem to, be at your best in the most critical of moments. And that, I think, speaks to your training and your preparedness. And my understanding is you've kind of developed through a lot of your challenges, right? Some of them medical related, some of them like sort of just a mentality. Is one of the things that you like to say to yourself and to others was like, are you afraid? Right? I mean, is that kind of a personification of you trying to just go after it, or is that a different line of thinking here?
Yeah, it's, to me, the "Are you afraid" slogan that kind of like, represented my whole Olympic run was, it was self. Are you afraid to succeed? Because at the end of the day, it's always way easier to call it quits. It's like, man, I played in the NFL, but I hurt my knee, or like,
Right.
I could have done that, but like this other thing, it lended itself more to like matches. And so are you afraid? It's scary. Like, it's scary to go for it and risk failing, because if you go for it and you really go for it and you don't succeed, at the end of the day, like, that's what you have, is that you just are like, oh no, it wasn't an injury, I wasn't tired, it was just I didn't do it. And that's kind of what I realize is you have to embrace that. You have to ask yourself, like, are you afraid to succeed?
I love it. I love it. Well, just a few last questions here in the interest of time before we let you go. So for everyone out there, what's next for Casey Andringa?
Yeah, so like I said, I skied my first couple mogul runs today, and basically I am just on a slow burn uphill to hopefully skiing full speed competition runs by the end of the season. I'm not going to compete this season. I'm doing some school right now, but the goal is to go into the summer the healthiest and strongest I've ever been, so I can start that Olympic grind all over again, and hopefully get there with my brother.
I love it. I love it. Oh, the family theme resonates again. So, switching gears quickly here, what is your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve is my body hurting, hands down. I've learned that everything in life is awesome until your body hurts. So.
Your body's definitely the greatest tool that you'll ever have. So it's tough to fully appreciate, but having a few nicks and dings definitely makes you appreciate it. Love it. So, all right, body pain, biggest pet peeve. You've obviously been through a lot. What is the greatest piece of advice that you've received along the way, Casey?
Okay, so I was thinking about this a lot today. The greatest two pieces of advice. First piece of advice is our entire lives and who we are is just a collection of our small little habits. Every habit you have day to day, no matter how good or bad, just adds up to create who you are as a person. So if you can create good habits for yourself, then you can get where you're going. And then the next piece of your advice is to just keep moving forward. Like, shit gets really hard sometimes, and it's really easy to see when you're past it. Hindsight, you can see it really well that like when you're at your lowest, then you can grind and you can make it out, and that's your story. But when you're down there, it does not feel like that, and it's really easy to get stuck. And so no matter how small the steps are, no matter what direction you're going, it doesn't matter. Just keep moving forward.
I love it. And I think that's a great story for skiing, but probably you'll even agree with this. More importantly, like that's just a great lesson for life in general, because like, it's hard. This is a good sort of alpha and omega moment here. It's like life is not a success only journey, and you've got to be comfortable with the pain, the challenge, and continue to go through it. Well, you've clearly done that, Casey. We're all going to be cheering for you here at part of the MuskOx herd, and we appreciate everything that you've done. It's awesome to have you represent Team USA. We appreciate it. We know there's a ton of hard work that goes into it, and it's just awesome to see you and the whole team, out there repping the red, white, and blue, having a good time and doing it. So, thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing your story. And like I said, we certainly appreciate you being part of the MuskOx herd here.
Thanks so much for having me. This was awesome.
Right on.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Casey.
Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Herd Has Spoken. I think we can all agree that Casey's a pretty fantastic representative of the United States of America who's got a great story. And I just love hearing about people who are so ecstatic about being able to serve this great nation. So kudos to Casey for all of his accomplishments, and being willing to share his story through teaching and through taking a few minutes here with a MuskOx herd. And if you aren't familiar with MuskOx yet, please go ahead and check out our website, GoMuskOx.com. We've got fantastic outdoor apparel for your next adventure. I know Casey's a big fan of our gear, and I think it's something that you'd appreciate getting a chance to check out as well. Well, we appreciate you listening. One last thanks to Casey. And until next time, I am Brad Hoos, host of The Herd Has Spoken. Roam freely.